One thing that we've actually been noticing a hell of a lot of is Chinese influence throughout Western media. And one of the main reasons for it is because Western media wants to tap into the Chinese market because there's like 1.5 billion of them. So just so you know, that means like more than one out of every eight people on Earth is Chinese, right? That's that's how huge the Chinese population is, and you know that 1.5 billion people, that's 1.5 billion pockets to empty, which is why so much of Western media wants to break into that market. But the problem is, to get into that market, there is a very high price that you have to pay. The Chinese government is a totalitarian, authoritarian, fascist, pseudo-communist, pseudo-capitalist, absolute fucking dystopian nightmare. And they have a lot of rules on things that you can and cannot do. Lots of shit gets banned in China. Lots of media gets banned in China. South Park got entirely banned from China for making fun of it and making fun of its censorship, and also for talking about this exact thing, Chinese infiltration of all of Western media. Because basically, like, I mean, I've 1.5 billion people, right? Companies are obviously going to do whatever, bend the knee a little bit so that they can get into that market. And here's another example of it happening. Disney censors the Simpsons episode with the Tiananmen Square reference in Hong Kong because I don't know if you know about Tiananmen Square. If you're Chinese, you probably don't. But yeah, Chinese government massacred a bunch of Chinese students. If you're tired of censorship, cancel culture, and the erosion of civil liberties, subscribe to Reclaim the Net, who are actually, they are very, very good at what they do. I thoroughly enjoy them. Disney Plus has censored an episode of The Simpsons in Hong Kong, where the streaming service recently launched. The episode was censored over references to the Tiananmen Square massacre. Until June last year, Hong Kong operated separately from China. Hong Kongers enjoyed more freedoms than the mainland. Yeah, Hong Kong has just sank right into authoritarianism because China, like, they fought against it. They tried as hard as they could. Unfortunately, the Chinese government managed to get so many plants in the Hong Kong parliament and in high positions and institutions. How's that? Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And unfortunately, they've just signed themselves over to China, against the will of the people. Because democracy works, yeah. Um, but basically, yeah, Hong Kong's absolutely terrible now. However, since Beijing enforced the national security law in Hong Kong, the censorship laws enforced in China started applying on the island. On social media, Disney Plus subscribers began reporting that an episode in season 16 had been removed in Hong Kong. We've managed to confirm that the season 16 episode, Goo Goo Pai Pan, has been removed in Hong Kong. The episode had two references to the Tiananmen Square massacre. It featured the famous Tank Man photo and a plaque with the statement, Tiananmen Square. On this site in 1989, nothing happened. People often use the statement to mock the government's attempts to erase the event from history. There's actually a really good video that you can find on YouTube of a guy going up to like random Chinese people and asking them about Tiananmen Square on the anniversary of it. And I think in the video, most of the younger people were like, I've never heard of that. I don't know what it is. But then all the older people were all going, yeah, I know what day it is today, but I can't talk about it. And then they got visibly uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah, the Chinese government doesn't like to let everybody know that it massacred its own citizens. I mean, it still does it today. In China, references to the Tiananmen Square massacre are heavily censored and is called the Tiananmen Square Incident. It wasn't an incident, it was a massacre. On June the 4th, 1989, in an effort to stop a protest by students about corruption in the government and democratic reforms, the Chinese government sent the army to Tiananmen Square with tanks. The exact death toll from the clash between protesters and the army has never been released, although it is speculated to be in the thousands. Before the enforcement of the national security law, Hong Kongers held vigils to commemorate the incident every year. The Hong Kong government went as far as shutting down a museum that displayed exhibits to commemorate the event. Okay, because basically, Chinese government, governments don't like it when people point out shitty things that it's done, because then when you point out these shitty things, you can turn people against the government, and when people no longer support the government, that delegitimizes it in their eyes. Now, one of the things that may be very happy and handy about China is there's 1.5 billion of them. Even if there are 100 million people working in the government, You outnumber them. You outnumber them a hell of a fucking lot. I'm just saying. I'm just saying there is a lot more of you than there are of them. A lot more. I'm just saying. Just do what Russia did in World War Two. Steamroll. Just a human steamroller. It's fine. It's for a good cause. But, yeah. And this is the problem that we're getting with Western media. Western media is there's certain things that Western media will not. They won't even make a movie about certain things or containing certain concepts anymore because they will go, oh yeah, we can make whatever the hell we wanted in the West, but then we might get banned from China. So what they're doing is they're making movies that can get launched in the West and in China, which is why, and in China, everyone knows about the infamous event that happened with the Star Wars poster where they, Finn, the proud black man in front of the Star Wars poster, but on the same poster in China, they shrank him down and put him away in the back because me no Reiki Bracky. Yeah, that's just the way it is in China now, even though that is a kind of a fucking racist thing, and it's quite shocking because most of Western media is saying that, oh, racism is terrible, and putting people in camps is terrible, and like genociding people, and exterminations, and sterilizations, and all these other, homophobia, and hating people for their race. Ah, yes, these things are absolutely terrible. And we should probably, campaign for these such things to stop, for such things to, stop and finally end because we care about people. Yeah, but when it comes to China, with the sheer amount of money that they can make there, watch how fast all of that disappears. I mean, it's the same. It's called woke capitalism, where it's all fake. Like see any company that goes, ah, yes, we care about LGBT issues and blah 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 and everything. Yeah, look at the same Twitter accounts in Saudi Arabia and Russia. Where gay people still get an awful lot of shit. Well, sorry, in Saudi Arabia it's a bit more than a lot of shit. They get fucking executed. But basically, over there in places where it's required, that type of activism is required. These companies don't give a shit and they will not do it. Why? Because it'll hurt their bottom line. Whereas over in the West, where it's safer to do it, it's like, ah, yes, we care about these issues now because we know it won't affect profits. Or it might affect profits positively. Because they're like, oh, yes, we care about LGBT issues, buy our products, and then get excited for next product. But whereas over in Russia and Saudi Arabia and all these other places, the company, LGBT, what's that? It's this Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Like that's why you see all woke capitalism, all these companies, every single bit of it is fake. Every single bit of it is fake. If they actually did care, then they would have started doing it, back in the 80s and 90s when this shit was actually like properly really required. Right? They're not doing it in like Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, or anywhere else. They're not doing it there because they don't actually care. And this is one of the things that I enjoy because the left and the right both agree on that. These companies do not actually care. Right? They will abandon all of these woke principles that they've been screaming about for like the last 5 years just so that they can get into the Chinese market. Because at the end of the day, all that really matters is money. And these are media companies. These are people that make movies and like videos and fucking films and series and all other types of art. It's art. They are basically gigantic, monstrous art publishers that can publish art all over the world. But they're quite happy to censor it, modify it, and, redact certain things so that they can make money. Right? They don't care about, bending the knee to a giant totalitarian government that has committed, pretty much constant daily war crimes. They don't care. They don't care. They don't give a fuck about any of that. They just want money.